Marvel fans, animation fans, Spidey fans, and more unite to watch the brand new web-slinging wonder, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. A show that explores storylines known and unknown, and while many fans thought this was going to be a part of the MCU, it was announced not long before the show released that this was more of an Elseworld story. While it dives into a similar world, we see key differences that make this a more friendly neighborhood version of the character. And we'll be talking all of this and way more as I welcome you to Television Tuesday, the show where we talk TV on a Tuesday and tell you all about it. I'm your host, Kael, and today we are reviewing and breaking down your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And that is the last time I'll be using the full title. We're gonna start out with a spoiler-free section, and I'll give my thoughts on the MCU situation. While I was excited that this was originally going to be an origin story for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, that was going to throw so many limitations on the story. We wouldn't be able to deal with any of the villains from No Way Home, as it seems that Peter's meeting them all for the first time, and we would have limits everywhere else we went, as it didn't seem like Tom Holland Spidey had been through too many major events before Spider-Man Homecoming. However, I absolutely love that this is most definitely a version of that character, as this Spider-Man kind of looks and sounds like Tom Holland. Aunt May in this show also looks very similar to Marissa Tomei's version of the character, and the homemade versions of Spider-Man really resemble each other. And this is referenced in the moment where Peter walks into his apartment to see Aunt May with Norman Osborn instead of Tony Stark, making this feel like What If in a way. What if Norman Osborn became Peter's mentor? And this sets the show on a much different course. Before I go into spoilers, I'll give my general thoughts on the show. I loved this first season and felt like this is some prime young Peter Spider-Man storytelling. The classic characters mixed in with the new characters feels fresh, and honestly, I was worried about this show not finding enough things to keep it interesting and different from all of the other Spider-Man stories we have going on right now, with MCU Peter, PlayStation or Insomniac Spider-Man, the Into the Spider-Verse story, and much more. But there is one thing that sets this apart, and damn it, I wish I could stand on this table for this, but style. The comic book looking covers to start an episode, the drawn looking characters with vibrant color, the adaptation of MCU meets comic book Peter, putting literal comic book panel framing on the screen, and more. This show has created a style that fits its story while finding uniqueness within itself. This is exactly what this show needed to have. Alright, spoiler warning. Past this point, I will be ripping apart the plot. Here we go. Let's circle back to What If Norman Osborn was Peter's mentor. It was an early and immediate surprise when they mimicked the cinematography from Captain America Civil War, only to reveal Norman Osborn talking to Aunt May, interested in Peter as an intern at Oscorp. Killer performance from Coleman Domingo as Norman Osborn so far. Their relationship starts out awesome. Very early on, Norman catches Peter leaving Oscorp as Spider-Man and reveals he had suspected as much. This starts Team Spider-Man as they begin working together with the help of Harry, who accidentally joins the team after being in the right place at the right time. At first it seems like this is an innocent workflow, but it becomes more sketchy as Norman slowly starts making decisions and pulling strings by himself. He tells Sergeant Ross about having a superhero on staff that he is willing to register through the Sokovia Accords, but tells him the identity must remain private. He tries to change Peter's hero gimmick and, more importantly, butchers the famous line, "With great power comes great respect." This absolutely floored me. At first, you fear Peter just being sent down the wrong path, but I think this is more of a moment to highlight how strong Peter's morality is. He flags this immediately, even telling Harry he thinks it was wrong. I love Harry's response though, is that he tells him even his father should respect what Spider-Man wants to do and how he wants to handle things. This was probably one of my favorite moments of the show so far. Peter's relationship with Norman, however, is in a bit of an awkward spot at the end of the season. Audience members are made to feel weary when Peter loses the fight with Scorpion and is saved by a goblin glider. This looks even worse when Norman steals and injects Peter's blood into a spider. And through a series of wild events, Norman reveals to his interns that they have been building him a gateway to space. And what do you know? terrible things proceed. As the symbiote creature that Doctor Strange fought in episode 1 comes back through the portal, leveling the lab, Doctor Strange returns to defeat the beast, and, Spider-Man is here. How did he get here? Where'd Peter go? Well, the two team up and defeat the creature, but Strange is forced to use the Time Stone. We learn that this is the same fight with the creature that he was having in episode 1, and we see the spider go through the Time Stone portal and onto Peter, which creates this wicked time loop of Peter being infected by his own infected blood. Trippy to think about, but getting this aspect of the story revealed like it was so cool. This also leaves a little piece of the Venom symbiote in the lab, and whether it attaches to Peter or Norman or just hangs out in the lab for a while before getting anybody, we know what that means. But this does leave Peter in an odd spot with Norman, but him and Harry are completely fine as he's designed Peter's red and blue suit, and he continues to do good as Spider-Man. Rip to that white suit though, because that thing was gorgeous. This catches us up to speed, as I would say that the story with Norman and Oscorp is your main story in season 1, but let's talk about some of the other lurking threats. I loved the amount of classic villains used, and this would not have been possible had the story been set in the MCU. I loved the inclusion of Peter's day life during school and meeting the characters around him, like Nico, May, Pearl, and Lonnie. And I know there is much more to Nico's character, but for those of you who haven't spent the last 10 years hovering over a comic book, I'm not going to talk about that character that much, as I don't want to spoil her story moving forward, as she's a bit of a newer character compared to some of these others. So I'll move on to the story of Lonnie Lincoln. This was quite the tragedy, as we take a kid doing well in school with a very promising future in football. He's even the nice jock, as he shows Peter he's a smart, fun guy, and they end up developing a friendship throughout class. Things take a turn as you learn about Lonnie's family living in poverty, but even then, you feel like things aren't all good in the hood. This is where we learn that Lonnie's little brother is joined up with Big Don, the leader of the 1/10th Street Gang. Big Don, super fun character by the way. Lonnie works out a deal to release his brother from the gang, but it forces Lonnie to lose school and football as he now has to join the gang himself. It's hard to watch Lonnie throw his life away, but he quickly begins moving up the ranks of the gang after showing some promising fighting skills, and it then becomes hard to not root for Gang Lonnie. After a victory, he tells Big Don he doesn't want to be called Superstar anymore. They then give him the name Tombstone. His story this season ends with a lot of promise as he is exposed to the chemical that hardens his skin, giving him the powers of Tombstone from the comic books. Now that he owns his name, he teams up with Spider-Man in an awesome fashion. They take down Scorpion together. As threats get bigger, Big Don decides to get the hell out of Dodge, letting our boy Tombstone take over the 1/10th. Speaking of Scorpion, he has an awesome arc as well, as we were originally introduced to the leader of the Scorpion gang, Mac Gargan. Gargan quickly learns he needs more firepower and turns to our favorite mad scientist, Dr. Octavius. Doc Ock supplies many dangerous weapons, or enhancements as he says, to the street criminals of NYC. It isn't revealed until police come to stop him that he has been working on his famous tentacles, and we see a version of them not attached to his body put to use in a hilarious scene where he's just dancing away from cops. However, this is put to a quick end when Thunderbolt Ross and Iron Man are like, yeah, you go ahead and stop right there. From his cell, we see outlines of drawings that appear to be his tentacles attached to his body. In other words, he'll be back. I love how much this show sets up as well, with well-known characters supporting the cast like Dr. Connors, who may become Lizard, Amadeus Cho, who is a character with loads of potential, as other versions of this character have become the Iron Spider, Hulk, and Brawn, who is like a version of the Hulk. We see that the Civil War is still going on, as Cap and Iron Man are going through it, as we see in the news throughout the show. And I've gotta say, this Civil War maybe feels slightly more like the comic book version, as we're kind of seeing it through the media, and I feel like that was something that was like going on through the comic books. And I think the Civil War and Norman's weird involvement play into the visit that we are paid from Daredevil, as he's stealing what we assume to be information from Oscorp. This leads to an awesome fight between Spidey and Daredevil, and I think this is one of the coolest Spider-Man fights we have gotten in years. I'll note on top of that the team who made the show took to social media to reveal that we're getting Gwen Stacy next season, so this show's got nothing but good to come. With a limitless Marvel universe surrounding it, I can't wait to see what comes next, as this show has been renewed for seasons 2 and 3. Season 2 is already in production, and with the reveal of Peter's father being in prison talking to Aunt May, we can just assume that next season things are going to get personal for Peter. If I had anything negative to say about this show, it would just be that I think people wanted to see a Spider-Man story that sees Peter with nothing and have him really attached to the words left to him by Uncle Ben. I think getting the tech from Norman really mimics the tech he was given by Iron Man in a way, at least on the resource front anyways, but I really don't think that this will last, as that man has to goblin out at some point and ruin the relationship with Peter.
Godspeed, Spider-Man.
Then I'm hoping to see some solo Spider-Man, but I couldn't be more happy with season 1 as a whole. I think they are headed in an amazing direction, and the style of the show is spectacular. Okay, sorry, I won't do that again, I just had to get that out. But I'm so excited to be back here reviewing season 2 when it comes out. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Television Tuesday. We have others like it. We just did Cobra Kai, the OG Daredevil show, and more. You'll also catch us here every Saturday reviewing movies old and new. But our main focus in this career is telling stories of our own. Check out our short films here on the YouTube channel. So go click on the next video. I'll see you there.